Welcome to Griffonomics.
Hey, it is good to be back.
So we're recording this deep dive in late February 2026. It's Wednesday the 25th specifically.
Right.
And I have to say, if you have been looking at your portfolio lately or just doom scrolling through tech headlines, you might have noticed something a little weird.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift happening.
Right. There's this massive shift happening in a sector that honestly most people think is incredibly boring.
Well, boring is usually where the money is.
Fair point, yeah.
Yeah.
But I am talking about public safety. I have got this stack of source materials on the desk here. We're looking at a Q4 earnings report, a transcript from an investor day, and like 3 different analyst notes.
And they're all screaming about one specific company.
Exactly. But here's the thing. When I say the name, you are going to have a very specific image pop into your head.
Let me guess, yellow plastic.
Exactly. Yellow plastic zap sounds. We are talking about Axon Enterprise because most of our listeners probably just know them as the Taser Company.
Which is completely fair. I mean, for 20 years, that was their entire identity. You sell a weapon, you put it on a belt, and you go home.
But reading through this material today, that identity feels almost ancient now. It feels a bit like calling Apple the iPod company.
It really does.
Because what we are looking at today, this massive pivot they are executing it, suggests they aren't really a hardware vendor anymore. They have morphed into something much bigger.
They're calling themselves a public sector digital infrastructure provider.
Which is quite the mouthful.
That's a massive mouthful, yeah. But you kind of have to look past the corporate buzzwords there. The distinction they are making is critical. If you are just selling tasers, you are basically selling hammers.
Right, you're a tool vendor.
Exactly, you're a tool vendor. But if you are selling the digital infrastructure, the thing that records the incident, uploads the evidence, writes the report using AI, and manages the 911 call that started the whole mess.
You aren't selling tools anymore.
No, you are building the operating system.
The public safety OS.
Right. Think of it as the Microsoft Windows for the concept of law and order.
That is a massive claim. And frankly, it's a little bit terrifying if you think about the scope of it. But we are here to dive into the business of it. Our mission today is to unpack this AI era plan, which I admit sounds like a villain's plot in a sci-fi movie.
It really does.
But financially, it is a juggernaut. We need to talk about the modernization of 9/11. We definitely need to talk about this number that jumped off the page at me. $14.4 billion.
The backlog.
The backlog. We will get to why that number matters so much, but let's start with the pivot, because I think a lot of people miss this entirely. They see a cop, they see a taser, and they just think Axon.
Right.
But looking at the business model today, here in 2026, the taser is really just the hook, isn't it?
It's the gateway drug. If you look at the financials they just released, you have to bifurcate the business. You have to split it in two. On one side, you have connected devices.
The hardware side.
The hardware. The Taser 10, the Axon Body 4 cameras, the fleet cameras they put in the cars and the drones. Like the drone tech.
Stuff you can touch.
Exactly. It's physical manufacturing. And it is a good business. But at the end of the day, it's a hardware business.
Which means margins are tight. You have to buy plastic, you have to buy chips, you have to ship atoms across the ocean.
And you have to pay tariffs.
Okay.
Which we will definitely discuss later. Right now, the gross margin on that hardware side is sitting around 49.3%.
Okay, so for every dollar they sell in hardware, they keep about 50 cents. That's fine, I guess. But it's not software money.
It's definitely not software money.
Oh.
And that is why the stock valuation is confusing a lot of people. Because the other side of the business, the software and services segment, is where the actual magic trick happens.
This is the cloud.
This is the cloud. This is Axon Evidence, the digital locker where all that video goes. This is Fusus, the real-time operations dashboard.
And the numbers there tell a completely different story.
Completely different. Software and services grew 40% year over year in Q4 2025.
Wow.
But the kicker is the margin. We are talking about gross margins of approximately 76.7%.
Wow. So that is elite SaaS territory. That is Salesforce. That is Adobe. So they are using the hardware to get in the door, but the profit engine is the software subscription.
Precisely. And this leads us to the concept of the moat. In investing, we always look for a moat, a castle wall that keeps competitors out. Axon's moat isn't the taser technology itself.
Because another company could just build a stun gun.
Exactly. Axon's moat is the data.
I want to push on this a bit because data is a moat is something literally every tech CEO says. Why is it actually true here? Let's say I am the police chief of a mid-sized city and I decide I hate Axon. Why can't I just switch to a competitor?
Walk through the logistics of that for a second.
Yeah.
You have been with Axon for 5 years. You have thousands of terabytes, or really petabytes effectively, of body cam footage stored in Axon evidence. That footage isn't just home movies. It is legal evidence. It has a chain of custody. It is tagged for active court cases, murder trials, internal affairs investigations.
So I can't just drag and drop that folder onto a USB drive.
No, absolutely not. To leave Axon, you would have to pay massive egress fees to get the data out of their cloud. Then you have to migrate it to a new system while ensuring you don't lose a single frame or break the chain of custody.
Because if you do, a defense attorney will get a murderer let off on a technicality.
Exactly. So the operational risk of switching is basically zero.
You just don't do it.
You don't do it. It is too sticky. Once an agency is in, they are in for life. And the metrics prove this. Their net revenue retention, or NRR, is at 125%.
Break that down for the listener who doesn't spend their life in spreadsheets. What does 125% NRR actually mean in the real world?
It means that if Axon stopped selling to new customers tomorrow, like if they didn't sign a single new police department, their revenue would still grow by 25% next year.
Just from existing customers?
Yes. It means their existing customers are spending more money with them every single year.
That is the classic land and expand strategy.
You land with the body camera.
Right.
Then you say, hey, for an extra $20 a month per officer, you can have unlimited storage. Then next year, it's, hey, for another $50, you can have VR training.
Then it's, how about some drones?
Exactly. They just keep layering on services.
And the biggest layer they have added recently, the one that really drove this 2025 success, is this AI era plan.
Yes, the AI era plan.
Now, I am always skeptical when companies slap AI on something and charge more for it. It usually just means they added a chatbot that doesn't really work. But Axon seems to have found a way to make police departments who are notoriously cheap actually pay for this.
The genius was in the bundling. Government procurement is a total nightmare. If you want to buy a new software tool for a police department, you usually have to go to the city council, hold a public hearing, get 3 bids. It takes 18 months.
Nobody wants to do that for a software update.
Exactly. So Axon created a bundle, the AI Era Plan. It is a subscription tier. You sign up once, and you get access to all the new AI features as they roll out. You bypass the procurement cycle entirely.
And the uptake on that has been what exactly?
Insane. In 2025, its first full year, this plan generated approximately $750 million in bookings.
$750 million? Just for the AI tier?
It is staggering.
But what are they actually getting for that money? Is this just ChatGPT for cops?
It's highly specialized. The killer app, the reason chiefs are actually signing the check, is a product called Draft One.
Draft One, I've read about this in the notes. This is the report writing bot.
Correct. And to understand why this is a killer app, you have to understand the daily life of a police officer.
Which involves a lot less car chases and a lot more typing than people think.
Right. Let's paint a picture. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
An officer has just spent an hour at a domestic disturbance call. It was chaotic. People were yelling. Maybe there was a scuffle. Now that officer has to go back to the station, sit under fluorescent lights, and type a report.
And they have to remember who said what.
They have to get the timeline perfectly right. If they mess up a quote, it could ruin the case in court 6 months from now.
And they are exhausted.
They are exhausted, they are hungry, and they hate typing. This is the grudge work of policing.
So how does Draft One change that 3 a.m. nightmare scenario?
With Draft One, the body camera was recording the whole time. The AI takes that audio, transcribes it, separates the speakers so it knows the husband said this, the wife said this, the officer said this.
Okay.
And then it uses a large language model to auto-draft the police report in the standard format.
It actually writes the narrative, like officer arrived on scene at 0200 hours?
Yes, it writes the narrative. Now, crucially, the officer must review it. The officer is still legally responsible for the accuracy, but instead of staring at a blank page, they're just editing a draft.
And how much time does that actually save?
Axon claims this saves officers approximately 11 hours per week on administrative tasks.
Wait, pause on that number for a second. 11 hours. That is more than 25% of a standard 40-hour work week.
It is a massive efficiency gain.
If that is true, that is not just a convenience feature. That is a workforce multiplier.
That is exactly the sales pitch. If you are a police chief and the mayor says we can't afford to hire more officers, you can turn around and buy Draft One. If you have 100 officers saving 10 hours a week, you have effectively added 25 officers to the street without paying a single new salary or pension.
That really helps explain why the unions might actually be okay with this. Because usually unions fight automation because they worry about jobs. But nobody wants to fight for the right to type reports at 3 in the morning.
Exactly. It automates the part of the job they absolutely hate. It turns the body camera from a liability tool, something that just exists to catch you if you screw up, into a productivity engine.
It changes the camera from a cost center to a high-margin data asset. But is it accurate? Because we all know AI hallucinates. We know these models sometimes just make things up in a legal context. If the AI invents a confession that didn't happen, that is a disaster.
That is absolutely the biggest risk. Axon has been very careful here. They claim the model is tuned to stick strictly to the transcript. It is not supposed to be creative.
But you are right to be skeptical.
Oh, defense attorneys are going to have a field day with this initially. They're going to subpoena the AI prompts. They're going to ask, did the officer write this or did the robot write this?
I can hear the cross-examination now. Officer, did you actually hear my client say that, or did the algorithm suggest he said it?
It is going to be a valid legal battleground. But from a business perspective, the agencies are buying it regardless. And it's not just reporting either. They have Axon Assistant, which is voice-enabled.
How does that work?
An officer can just say, hey, Axon, what is the towing policy for a vehicle blocking a driveway, and get an instant real-time policy check.
Like Siri, but it actually knows the local penal code.
Exactly. And then there's real-time translation.
This one feels like a game changer for actual safety in the field.
It really is. They support over 200 languages now. Imagine an officer pulls someone over who only speaks Farsi. Usually that is a high-tension situation. Misunderstandings happen, hands go to belts.
People panic.
But with this, the officer speaks English, the camera speaker outputs Farsi. The driver speaks Farsi, and the officer hears English in their earpiece.
It de-escalates through clear communication.
Exactly. So they aren't just selling cool tech. They are selling efficiency and safety. And that is a very powerful bundle to pitch to a city council.
Okay, so that handles the police officer on the street. But there is another piece of the puzzle that Axon is trying to rewire. And honestly, this part scares me a little because I didn't realize how broken the current system was until I dug into these notes. We need to talk about 911.
The first 120 seconds?
Right. Most people, including me, assume that when you call 911, it's like the movies. The operator sees exactly where you are. Maybe they can hack into a nearby camera. It's all very high tech.
And the reality is, it is mostly 1970s technology. It is landline infrastructure. In many cases, the dispatcher gets a cell tower triangulation that might be off by 300 meters. They can't see video. They're just listening.
And then they have to type what you say into a computer system and then read that over a radio to a police officer.
It is literal telephone. Suspect in a red shirt becomes suspect in a red hat by the time it gets to the squad car. Information is lost. Seconds are lost.
So Axon decides to fix this, but they aren't a telecom company. How do they just fix 911?
They bought their way in. This was the massive M&A strategy we saw unfolding over late 2025. They acquired two major players in the space, Carbine for $625 million and Prepared for $637 million.
That is over $1 billion spent on 911 tech.
It is a huge bet. Management calls these acquisitions chocolate and peanut butter. They perfectly complement each other. Carbine is the heavy infrastructure. It's the cloud-native platform that replaces the old on-premise call handling boxes sitting in the basement of the police station.
Okay, and what about Prepared?
Prepared is the clever one.
Yep.
Prepared is an AI-powered overlay. It doesn't require ripping out the old 1970s wires immediately. It just sits on top. It allows a dispatcher to send a text link to the 911 caller.
Okay.
If the caller clicks, it opens a secure stream. Suddenly, the dispatcher can see through the caller's camera.
So I call 911, I say there is a fire, they text me a link, I click it, and now they're seeing the fire live.
Live. And that video isn't just for the dispatcher. Axon's vision, with what they call the first 120 seconds, is to pipe that video instantly to the police officers who are driving to the scene.
So they aren't driving blind anymore?
No, but it gets wilder because they are integrating this with their drone program.
This is where it gets incredibly sci-fi. Walk us through this workflow.
Okay, a call comes in, shots fired at the mall, the dispatcher clicks a button, an autonomous drone, a drone as a first responder or DFR, launches from a dock on a nearby roof.
This is literally a drone that lives in a box.
Lives in a box, charges itself. It launches automatically. It flies to the GPS coordinates of the call. It gets there in 60 seconds because it ignores traffic.
Right, it just flies over everything.
Now, before the police officers even hit the siren, the drone is overhead. It is beaming live video to the dispatcher and the officers. The AI is analyzing The video flagging suspect detected, weapon detected.
Wow.
The AI is also transcribing the 911 call in real time and translating it if necessary.
So the officer pulls up to the mall, and on their dashboard, they have a live aerial view of the shooter, a transcript of what the caller is screaming, and a map of where everyone is standing.
That is the vision. Axon believes this can reduce response times from the typical 7 to 10 minutes down to potentially 120 seconds for that eyes-on moment.
It's a quantum leap, but it also creates a completely closed loop. If Axon owns the 911 software and the drone software and the body cam and the evidence cloud,
They own the entire life cycle of the emergency.
which brings us back to that operating system metaphor. You can't just buy one piece of this effectively. You really need the whole suite to make it work like that.
That is the ecosystem play.
Yeah.
And it is exactly why the backlog is so big.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, all this software needs hardware to run on. We talked about the pivot away from hardware, but the hardware is still the entry point to the ecosystem.
Right. You still need the physical device. The taser is still relevant. Yeah.
Absolutely. The TASER 10 is their flagship. It is currently in year 3 of a 5-year refresh cycle. The big selling point with the 10 is range. It has a higher effective range. It can accurately hit a target from much further away than the old models, up to 45 feet.
Why does that extra range matter so much?
Distance equals time. If an officer can engage a suspect from 40 feet away instead of 10 feet away, they have more time to talk. They have more time to de-escalate. They are safer, so they're less likely to panic and use lethal force.
So the higher range actually sells the safety narrative.
Exactly. And that improved safety profile is opening entirely new markets. Corrections, for instance, prisons and jails historically didn't buy a lot of tasers.
Yeah.
But with the TASER 10, Axon delivered the single largest customer booking in company history in 2025 to a corrections agency.
Interesting. So the prison market is opening up for them, but there is another market opening up that I found really fascinating in the analyst notes. And it's not police, it's not prisons, it is retail.
The Axon Body Mini.
This feels like a huge cultural shift. We are talking about putting body cameras on whom exactly? The cashier at a grocery store, the guy delivering my packages.
Essentially, yes. The Axon Body Mini is launching mid-2026. It is compact, it is durable, and it is designed specifically for commercial enterprise use. The pitch is simple. Organized retail theft is out of control. Workplace violence against nurses and healthcare workers is skyrocketing. Logistics drivers are getting robbed.
So the idea is if the retail employee or the delivery driver is wearing a camera, people behave better.
It is the civilizing effect of the lens. And if they don't behave better, you have high-quality evidence to prosecute them. Axon has already secured 2 high-volume U.S. enterprise customers for this.
Do we know who they are?
They haven't named them yet, but think big box retail, think major logistics companies.
That is a massive total addressable market. There are a lot more retail workers in the U.S. than there are cops.
Orders of magnitude more.
But it is also a little dystopic, isn't it? I mean, we are moving toward a world where every interaction, buying groceries, checking into the hospital, signing for a package, is recorded, transcribed, and uploaded to the Axon cloud.
It brings a whole new meaning to market penetration. It is shifting from a public safety OS to a civilian surveillance OS.
We will put a pin in the privacy implications for a moment because the investors listening are probably drooling over that retail TAM.
Yeah.
But there's one more hardware vertical we need to hit: drones and robotics. We mentioned the drone in a box, but there is also the anti-drone business.
Right, D-Drone. Axon acquired a company called D-Drone because if you think about it, bad guys have drones too. They are using them to drop contraband into prisons, to spy on stadiums, to disrupt airports.
So the drone is the shield against that.
The drone is the detection layer. It tells you there is an unauthorized drone, it is a DJI Mavic, and the pilot is standing right there behind that tree.
Can it shoot the drone down?
Well, that is the regulatory fight happening right now. They have a product called D-Drone Defender, which can jam specific frequencies, basically force the drone to land or go back to its pilot.
Is that even legal? I feel like the FCC gets really grumpy when you start jamming radio signals.
Currently, it is extremely restricted by regulation, mostly limited to federal agencies' military defense discussions, but Axon is lobbying hard. They want to change the laws to allow state and local police and eventually maybe critical infrastructure owners like stadiums to use this jamming tech.
That is a classic land and expand play right there. Buy the tech now, wait for the laws to change, and then sell it to every airport in the world.
It positions them perfectly for the future. It is a $20 billion opportunity, according to their own estimates.
Okay, so the strategy is sound, the tech is cool, the ambition is massive, but let's look at the bank account. Because all of this R&D and these acquisitions cost a lot of money. How did they actually do financially in 2025?
The headline numbers are undeniably strong. Total revenue for fiscal year 2025 was $2.78 billion.
Wow.
That is up 33% year over year. And Q4 revenue specifically surged 39%.
33% growth for a company this size is monster growth.
It is. But the number that really matters, the crystal ball number for investors, is bookings. They generated $7.4 billion in annual bookings, up 46%.
For the uninitiated, explain the difference there. Why do I care about bookings versus revenue?
Think of it like a gym membership. Revenue is the cash the gym collected this month. Bookings is the total value of the 2-year contract you just signed. Bookings tells you what the future revenue is guaranteed to be.
So they signed $7.4 billion worth of future contracts in just 1 year.
Yes. And if you stack all those contracts up, all the future money they are legally owed, you get the backlog.
And that is the $14.4 billion number.
That is the $14.4 billion total future contracted bookings number, up 43% year over year.
So they have $14.4 billion locked in.
Locked in. That provides incredible visibility. Axon knows exactly where its money is coming from for the next decade. If the economy crashes tomorrow, the police department isn't going to cancel its 10-year body camera contract.
It is basically recession-proof.
Crime doesn't stop during a recession. In fact, it often goes up. So the product becomes even more essential.
What about profitability, though? Are they actually making money, or are they burning it all on buying up 9/11 companies?
Their adjusted EBITDA margin is 25.5%. It is healthy.
Yeah.
But management has been very clear they are intentionally keeping margins lower than they could be because they are pouring money back into R&D. They see the opportunity in retail, in drones, in international expansion as so big that they are prioritizing growth over maximizing profit today.
The Amazon strategy. Keep reinvesting, keep growing the moat.
Exactly. But there are cracks in the armor. We have to talk about the risks because this stock is priced for perfection.
It is definitely not cheap.
It is very expensive. It trades at a multiple that suggests it will grow 20 to 30% forever. And that creates what analysts are calling the infrastructure valuation trap.
What is that exactly?
Well, Axon wants to be infrastructure, like a utility, like the
Right.
power company or the water company. But utilities don't trade at a 70 times price to earnings multiple. They trade at 15 times.
Right.
If the market suddenly decides, hey, you know what, you're a boring utility, stock price could get cut in half overnight without the underlying business actually failing. It's the falling knife theory.
That is the danger of being boring. If you succeed at becoming essential infrastructure, you might eventually get valued like boring infrastructure.
Precisely. And then there are the immediate headwinds. Tariffs. We mentioned hardware margins were down to 49.3%. That is largely due to global tariffs on components.
And since they manufacture a lot of this physical stuff.
It hits them hard. Total gross margins compressed to 57.9% because of this. Management calls it a one-time adjustment as long as tariffs stay at current levels, but it hurts profitability.
And then there is the elephant in the room that every tech investor hates. Stock-based compensation, or SBC.
The perennial complaint. Axon pays its people, and especially its executives, very heavily in stock. Their GAAP profitability, the official accounting profit, is punished by $634 million in SBC.
That is $634 million of value that effectively dilutes the existing shareholders.
It is. Management argues this is how they attract the top-tier talent to build a $14 billion backlog. But they have pledged to cap future annual dilution at 2.5%.
So they're listening to the criticism.
They are, but it is still a massive drag on the real GAAP earnings.
We also need to touch on the political and societal risks. Because unlike selling CRM software, selling police tech puts you right in the middle of the culture wars.
It absolutely does. There are two main angles here. First is privacy. If Axon's AI makes a mistake, if it hallucinates a confession or a facial recognition misidentifies a suspect, the reputational damage could be catastrophic.
Trust is hard to build and incredibly easy to lose.
And the second angle is federal exposure. Axon does business with DHS, with IC. We have seen how volatility in Washington over deportation policies or government shutdowns can impact federal contractors.
I noticed in the notes that when private prison stocks like GEO or CXW tank because of a political headline, Axon stocks sometimes dips in sympathy.
Exactly. They are in that law enforcement basket in the minds of some institutional investors, so any political standoff over immigration funding can threaten federal revenue streams, though you could argue Axon is much more insulated than a private prison.
Right, we have to maintain neutrality on the politics of it, but purely from an investment standpoint, that correlation is a risk factor.
It is a risk factor you have to price in.
So we have the monster growth, we have the risks. Where's this ship steering? They put some targets on the board for 2028, right?
They did. They gave guidance for 2026, expecting revenue growth of 27 to 30%. But the big 2028 target model is aiming for approximately $6 billion in annual revenue.
That is more than doubling their 2025 revenue in just 3 years.
That is the aggressive plan. And they want to hit a 28% adjusted EBITDA margin alongside that.
And they have a moonshot goal, too. This one isn't financial.
Right. To reduce gun-related deaths between police and the public by 50% by 2033.
That is a very bold metric, because that is not entirely in their control.
It is not.
Yeah.
But their thesis is that better tools, longer-range tasers, better training AI that de-escalates language barriers can actually move that needle. And frankly, if they achieve it, the financial success will naturally follow. If Axon Tech proves it stops people from getting shot, every city on Earth will buy it.
Doing good is good business.
That is the bet.
So let's bring this all together. We have looked at the hardware, the software, the AI monetization, the 9/11 takeover, the retail expansion. What is the final verdict from the analysts?
The consensus is a buy for the long term or a hold if you are highly valuation sensitive. If you step back, Axon is building the Windows 95 of public safety.
I have to ask, Windows 95 crashed a lot. Is that supposed to be a compliment?
In terms of ubiquity, yes. In terms of being the operating system that you simply must have to function in the modern world. Once an agency buys into this ecosystem, once their data is in the cloud, their drones are in the air, their 9/11 center is using the overlay they are locked in, the moat is wider than almost any other company in the sector. The market pullback offers a discount on a wide moat compounder, risk-defined portfolio protected.
That is a compelling synthesis, but I want to leave our listeners with that provocative thought we touched on earlier, the body mini.
The retail cam.
We have spent 20 years getting used to the idea of police wearing cameras. We accepted it as a tool for accountability. We watched the footage on the evening news. But as Axon moves into retail, into hospitals, into logistics,
The camera is turning around.
the camera is turning around. At what point does the public safety OS become a civilian surveillance OS? As listeners, are we ready for a world where the shopkeeper, the nurse, and the delivery driver are all recording us all the time, feeding that data into one central AI?
It is a profound question. It is not just about catching criminals anymore. It is about a digitized, perpetually recorded society.
Yeah.
And Axon is the one holding the hard drive
And charging a subscription fee for it.
and charging a very hefty, high-margin subscription fee for it.
Something to mull over the next time you walk into a store or sign for a package. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We will see you next time.
Stay safe out there.